I found months of secret text messages on my wife's phone showing she was planning to leave me and our 2 children for her coworker. She had been lying about working late while actually meeting him at hotels. I walked into our home office last Tuesday night to grab my laptop charger. Isabella, 34F, had left her work phone on the desk, screen still lit up. A text notification showed on the lock screen from someone named James with a preview that made my stomach drop. The message read, "Can't wait to have you all to myself again tomorrow. Same hotel as last week." I stared at that phone for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Isabella and I have been together for 9 years, married for 6. We have 2 kids, Ava, 7F, and Oliver, 4M. She works as a senior vice president at a major consulting firm downtown. I've been the primary caregiver since Oliver was born because her salary was 3 times what I made as a project manager at a small nonprofit. The phone buzzed again. Another message from James, "Tell David you're working late again. He's so clueless it's almost funny." That second message hit me like a truck. I picked up her phone and somehow managed to unlock it. She still used our anniversary date as her passcode. What I found in her messages made me physically sick. Months of conversations with James Chen, her direct report who started at the company 8 months ago. Photos they had sent each other. Detailed plans about their meetings at hotels during her supposed business trips. But James wasn't the only one. There were flirty conversations with 3 other men from her office. Screenshots of dating app conversations where she described herself as separated even though we were very much married. She had been telling people at work that we were having problems and she was planning to leave me soon. I sat in that office chair scrolling through months of lies until 2 a.m. Isabella came home around midnight from what she claimed was a client dinner. She went straight to bed without even checking on the kids. I stayed up the rest of the night taking screenshots of everything. The next morning, I confronted her while the kids were eating breakfast in the next room. I placed her phone on the kitchen counter with one of the messages visible. She looked at the screen and went completely pale. Isabella immediately started crying and saying it wasn't what it looked like. She claimed James had been pursuing her and she was just being polite. When I showed her the hotel photos she had sent him, she changed her story. She said they had only met once and it was a mistake. When I showed her messages from 2 weeks ago where she was planning their next meeting, she finally stopped lying. She begged me not to leave her. She said she would quit her job immediately and we could go to counseling. She promised she would never see any of these men again. But then she asked me not to tell anyone about this because it could ruin her career. That request made me realize she was more worried about her reputation than our marriage. She wasn't sorry about cheating. She was sorry about getting caught. I told her I needed time to think and that she should stay at her sister's house for a few days. She packed a bag and left that afternoon, but not before asking if I was going to tell her boss about James. She was still trying to protect him even after everything. The kids kept asking where mom went. I told them she had to go help Aunt Lisa with something for a few days. Ava seemed to buy it, but Oliver kept asking when mommy was coming home. While Isabella was gone, I did more digging. I found credit card statements showing charges at expensive restaurants and hotels on days when she said she was working late or traveling for business. There were Uber rides to James's apartment building. She had been lying about where she was going for months. I also found out she had opened a separate checking account 3 months ago that I didn't know about. She had been moving money there from our joint account. Small amounts at first, then larger transfers. There was almost $15,000 in that account. The worst part was finding a folder on her laptop labeled apartment hunting. She had been looking at 1-bedroom apartments downtown, close to her office and James's place. The search history showed she had been planning this for at least 4 months. She was going to leave me and the kids and hadn't said a word. On Thursday, her boss called me directly. His name is Robert Kim and he's the managing partner at her firm. He said he needed to speak with me about a serious matter involving Isabella and asked if I could come to his office Friday morning. I met with Robert and 2 other senior partners. They told me they had received an anonymous tip about Isabella and James's relationship. Company policy strictly prohibits relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. They had been conducting an internal investigation for the past week. They had security footage of Isabella and James leaving the building together multiple times after hours. They had hotel receipts charged to the company credit card that James had used for their meetings. Isabella had been signing off on James's expense reports that included these hotel charges, essentially helping him steal from the company. Robert asked if I had any evidence of their relationship. I showed them some of the messages from Isabella's phone. They took photos of the screenshots with my permission. The partners explained that Isabella would likely be terminated immediately once they completed their investigation. James would definitely be fired and they were considering pressing charges for the fraudulent expense reports. The total amount he had stolen was over $8,000. I asked what this meant for Isabella's career in the industry. Robert said word travels fast in their field and that this kind of scandal would make it very difficult for her to find another position at a similar level. He seemed genuinely sorry for me and the kids. When I got home Friday afternoon, Isabella was sitting in our living room. She had let herself in with her key. The kids were at my mom's house for the afternoon. She immediately started talking about how we could work through this and rebuild our marriage. She said she had spoken to a counselor who specializes in infidelity and made an appointment for us next week. She had printed out articles about couples who had survived affairs. I told her about my meeting with her boss. Her face went white and she started shaking. She asked how they found out and whether I had told them anything. When I explained about the anonymous tip and the investigation, she started crying harder than I had ever seen. She begged me not to cooperate with the investigation. She said if she lost her job, we would lose our health insurance and wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage. She promised she would end things with James immediately and never speak to him again. But she was still lying. Even then, sitting in our living room begging for another chance, she was lying about basic facts. She said she and James had only been together 3 times when I had evidence of at least a dozen meetings. She said she had never talked about leaving me when I had screenshots of her telling James she was planning to file for divorce in the spring. I told her she needed to find somewhere else to stay permanently. She asked if she could keep seeing the kids and I said we would work out a schedule once I talked to a lawyer. Isabella packed more of her things and left Sunday night. She has been staying at her sister's house ever since. She texts me every day asking about the kids and whether I've made a decision about our marriage. She keeps saying she made a terrible mistake and wants to fix things. But I keep thinking about that message where James called me clueless. I keep thinking about her planning to leave us without saying anything. I keep thinking about the money she hid from me in the apartment she was going to rent. The kids keep asking when mom is coming home. Ava asked if we're getting divorced like her friend's parents. I didn't know what to say. I have a consultation with a divorce lawyer tomorrow morning. I found one who specializes in cases involving adultery and financial deception. Isabella doesn't know about the appointment yet. Part of me wants to try counseling and see if we can save our marriage. We have 9 years of history together and 2 kids who need their mom. But I don't know how to trust someone who was planning to abandon us without even having a conversation about problems in our marriage. The other part of me thinks about that anonymous tip to her company. Someone at her office thought what she was doing was wrong enough to risk their own career by reporting it. If her own coworkers were disgusted by her behavior, how can I pretend it's something we can just work through? I haven't told anyone in my family what happened yet. Isabella's sister keeps calling me asking when Isabella can come home. Her parents have been texting asking if everything is okay because Isabella seems upset lately. I don't know what to do next. The kids need stability and I need to make sure they're taken care of no matter what happens with Isabella's job situation. But I also can't keep pretending that everything is normal when my wife spent months planning to leave us for her coworker. Update 1: The divorce consultation went differently than I expected. The lawyer, Janet Morrison, reviewed all the evidence I had collected and said Isabella's behavior constituted several grounds for fault-based divorce in our state. The hidden bank account and planned abandonment of the children were particularly damaging to any custody case she might try to make. But the biggest surprise came 2 days after that consultation. Isabella showed up at our house Tuesday evening while I was making dinner for the kids. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She said we needed to talk privately. We sat in the living room while the kids finished eating. Isabella told me she had been fired from her job the previous Friday. The investigation had concluded and both she and James were terminated immediately. The company decided not to press criminal charges for the expense report fraud, but James had to pay back the full amount. She said she had spent the weekend looking for new jobs but wasn't having any luck. 3 companies had already called her current boss for references and each time, Robert had given her what she called a very unfavorable review. The consulting industry is smaller than I realized and word was spreading quickly. Then she told me something that made my blood boil. She said James had been texting her constantly since they were both fired, but not for the reasons I expected. He wasn't trying to comfort her or figure out their next steps together. He was furious with her for getting caught and ruining his career. According to Isabella, James blamed her for the whole situation. He said she should have been more careful with her phone and that he never wanted a serious relationship anyway. He told her she was delusional if she thought he was going to leave his girlfriend for her. That's when I learned James had a girlfriend the entire time. A woman named Jessica who he'd been dating for 2 years. Isabella knew about Jessica from the beginning but convinced herself that James was going to break up with her eventually. Isabella cried while she told me all this. She said she realized she had thrown away our marriage for someone who never cared about her at all. She begged me to give her another chance and said she would do anything to make things right. But there was more. Isabella's sister Lisa called me the next day and told me something Isabella hadn't mentioned. Apparently, Isabella had been telling her family that I was having an affair and that's why their marriage was falling apart. She had been painting herself as the victim for months. Lisa said she never believed Isabella's story because she knew how dedicated I was to the kids and how hard I worked to support Isabella's career. When Isabella finally told her family the truth this week, Lisa was furious. She said she felt manipulated and lied to. The conversation with Lisa made me realize how deep Isabella's deception went. She wasn't just lying to me about the affair. She was creating an entire false narrative to justify her behavior to herself and everyone around her. I decided to tell my parents and my brother what had really happened. My mom cried when I showed her some of the evidence. My dad got angry and said he never trusted Isabella completely because she always seemed to put her career before the family. My brother offered to help me pay for the divorce lawyer if money became an issue. The kids were starting to ask more specific questions about why mom wasn't living with us anymore. Ava asked if it was because mom and dad were fighting. Oliver started having nightmares and would climb into my bed every night around 2 a.m. I decided to tell them a simplified version of the truth. I explained that mom had made some bad choices that hurt our family and that we were going to live separately for a while. I assured them that both mom and dad loved them very much and that none of this was their fault. Ava asked if mom was going to marry someone else. I told her I didn't know what would happen in the future but that our family would always be important even if it looked different than before. Isabella started showing up at the kids' school and activities without telling me first. She would take Ava and Oliver for ice cream or to the park and then bring them home an hour late. When I asked her to coordinate with me before making plans with the kids, she said she didn't need my permission to see her own children. This led to an argument in our driveway last Friday evening when she brought the kids home 2 hours late from what was supposed to be a quick trip to get Oliver new shoes. The kids were tired and hungry and Oliver was crying because he had missed his usual nap time. I told Isabella that she needed to respect the schedule we had discussed and stop making unilateral decisions about the children's time. She responded by saying I was trying to turn the kids against her and that I was being vindictive because I was angry about her job situation. That argument made me realize we needed formal custody arrangements as soon as possible. Isabella's behavior was becoming unpredictable and the kids were getting confused about the rules and expectations. I met with Janet Morrison again and we filed preliminary custody papers requesting that I have primary physical custody with Isabella getting supervised visitation until we could establish a more permanent arrangement. The filing also requested temporary spousal support payments to stop, given that Isabella's termination was due to her own misconduct. Isabella received the custody papers on Monday morning. She called me immediately, screaming about how I was trying to steal her children from her. She said she was going to fight for full custody and that any judge would see that I was the one destroying the family. But her threats felt hollow. She was living in her sister's spare bedroom with no job and no prospects. She had already proven she was willing to abandon the children for her own desires. Her position in any custody battle was incredibly weak. The most telling conversation happened when Ava asked me why mom seemed so sad all the time now. She said when they went to get ice cream last week, mom kept checking her phone and seemed distracted. Ava asked if mom missed living with us. I told Ava that mom was going through a difficult time right now and that sometimes adults make mistakes that have big consequences. Ava nodded like she understood more than I expected her to. That night, I looked at our family photos from last Christmas. Isabella seemed genuinely happy in those pictures. We all did. I kept trying to figure out when things started to change and when she decided that our life together wasn't enough for her anymore. But looking at those photos also reminded me of how much pretending had been going on. How many times Isabella smiled for the camera after spending the day texting James. How many family dinners happened right after she had been planning her exit strategy. I realized I wasn't mourning the loss of our marriage. I was mourning the loss of what I thought our marriage was. The real version had been broken for much longer than I knew. Update 2: The custody hearing was scheduled for last Thursday morning. Isabella hired a lawyer using money she borrowed from her parents, but it was clear her attorney wasn't prepared for the amount of evidence I had against her. Janet Morrison presented a timeline of Isabella's deception that was devastating. The hidden bank account, the apartment hunting, the lies to her family about me having an affair, and the pattern of putting the children second to her relationship with James. The judge listened carefully and asked several pointed questions about Isabella's current living situation and employment status. Isabella's lawyer tried to argue that her affair was a private matter that shouldn't affect custody arrangements. He claimed that Isabella was a devoted mother who had made a mistake in her marriage but was committed to her children. But then Janet presented something I hadn't expected. She had subpoenaed Isabella's text messages from the phone company, including ones that Isabella had deleted from her device. There were messages to James where Isabella complained about having to deal with the kids' schedules and how much easier her life would be when she moved out. One message said that she was tired of pretending to be happy playing house when she wanted to be traveling and advancing her career. Another said that having kids so young had been a mistake and that she envied James for being free to do whatever he wanted. Reading those messages in court was like getting punched in the stomach. Isabella had written them during the same week she was helping Oliver learn to ride his bike and attending Ava's school play. She had been resenting our children while acting like a loving mother to their faces. The judge granted me temporary primary custody with Isabella getting supervised visits every other weekend. She was also ordered to find employment within 60 days and to provide proof of stable housing before the custody arrangement could be revisited. Isabella broke down crying in the courtroom hallway after the hearing. She kept saying the messages were taken out of context and that she loved the kids more than anything. But her own words had convicted her. The real shock came 3 days later when Isabella's sister Lisa called me with news I wasn't expecting. Isabella had lied to me about James, blaming her for everything. Lisa had run into James at a restaurant downtown and decided to confront him about what he had done to our family. According to Lisa, James told her that Isabella had been the one pursuing him aggressively from his first week at the company. She had told him that her marriage was already over and that she was just waiting for the right time to leave. James said Isabella had been planning her exit strategy long before they became involved physically. James also told Lisa that Isabella had asked him to help her hide money from me and had suggested they could rent an apartment together once her divorce was finalized. He said he had never agreed to any of that and had made it clear their relationship was purely physical. This conversation with Lisa made me realize that Isabella had been lying to everyone: me, James, her family, and probably herself. She had created different versions of reality for different people and managed to keep all the lies straight until everything collapsed. But the most disturbing revelation came when Lisa told me that Isabella had asked James to lie to investigators about the timeline of their relationship. She wanted him to say they had only been together for a few weeks instead of months. James had refused and told her he wasn't going to commit perjury to save her career. I started to wonder if Isabella's decision to finally tell me some version of the truth had less to do with guilt and more to do with the fact that all her other options had disappeared. James didn't want her job was gone, and her lies were catching up with her. The kids were adjusting better than I expected to the new custody schedule. Ava seemed relieved that the arguing had stopped and that there was more predictability in our daily routine. Oliver was still having some nightmares, but they were getting less frequent. Isabella's visits with the kids were supervised by her sister Lisa, who had agreed to do it to avoid having a court-appointed supervisor. Lisa told me that Isabella seemed distracted during these visits and spent a lot of time on her phone applying for jobs. During one visit, Isabella asked Ava if she missed having mom at home every day. Ava said she missed some things but that it was quieter now and dad wasn't sad anymore. That comment apparently upset Isabella quite a bit. The job search wasn't going well for Isabella. She had managed to get 2 interviews, but both companies ultimately decided not to hire her after checking her references. The consulting industry is built on reputation and trust, and Isabella had damaged both beyond repair. Her parents offered to loan her money to start her own consulting practice, but Isabella would need clients to make that work. Given her reputation in the industry, finding clients was going to be extremely difficult. Meanwhile, I was managing fine as a single parent. My nonprofit job had flexible hours and my boss was understanding about the custody situation. My mom helped with childcare when needed and the kids were thriving with the consistent routine. I found myself not missing Isabella's presence in our daily life as much as I expected. There was less tension in the house and I didn't have to wonder what lies she might be telling or what she was really doing when she said she was working late. The divorce proceedings were moving forward steadily. Isabella had initially threatened to fight for half of everything, but her legal position was weak given the evidence of her planned abandonment and financial deception. Her lawyer advised her to accept the settlement offer Janet had prepared. I would keep the house in primary custody, Isabella would get her retirement account and personal belongings, and she would pay modest child support once she found employment. Isabella signed the settlement agreement last Tuesday. She said she didn't have the money or energy to fight a battle she couldn't win. The divorce should be finalized within the next 30 days. The hardest part was explaining to the kids that mom and dad wouldn't be married anymore but that we would always be their parents. Ava asked if this meant she could only love one of us at a time. I assured her that she could love both of us and that our love for her would never change. Oliver asked if Isabella would still be his mom even if she didn't live with us. I told him that she would always be his mom no matter where she lived or what happened between the adults. Last weekend, Isabella took the kids to the zoo during her supervised visit. According to Lisa, Isabella seemed more engaged with them than she had been in previous visits. She put her phone away and focused on showing them the animals and reading the information signs. When she brought them home, Isabella asked if she could talk to me privately for a few minutes. We sat on the front porch while the kids played in the backyard. Isabella apologized for everything that had happened and said she knew she had made terrible choices. She said she hoped someday I could forgive her and that the kids wouldn't hate her when they got older and understood what she had done. I told her that forgiveness would take time and that her relationship with the children depended on her being honest and consistent going forward. She nodded and said she understood. As she walked to her car, Isabella turned back and said she hoped I would find someone who appreciated the kind of husband and father I was. She said she realized too late what she had given up. I watched her drive away and realized that conversation might have been the first completely honest interaction we'd had in over a year. Update 3: The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. Isabella found a job with a small consulting firm in another city about 3 hours away. The position pays significantly less than her previous job, but it was the only offer she received after months of searching. She moved there 6 weeks ago and has been driving back every other weekend to see the kids during her scheduled visitation. The visits are no longer supervised since she has shown she can be responsible during her time with Ava and Oliver. The kids have adapted well to the new routine. Ava has stopped asking when mom is coming home permanently and seems to understand that this is how our family works now. Oliver still gets confused sometimes about why he has 2 houses, but he's only 4 and I think he'll adjust as he gets older. Isabella's relationship with the children has actually improved since she moved away. She's more present during their visits and has stopped trying to use them to get information about my life or to send messages about reconciliation. The supervised visits taught her to focus entirely on Ava and Oliver during their time together. Last month, Ava told me that mom seems happier now when they see her. Isabella has apparently stopped crying during visits and has started planning activities that the kids enjoy instead of just taking them out to eat or to the mall. The most significant development happened 3 weeks ago when Isabella called to tell me she had started dating someone new. His name is Tom and he works at her new company. She wanted me to know before the kids mentioned him, since she was planning to introduce them during her next visit. I was surprised by how little this news bothered me. There was no jealousy or anger, just a mild curiosity about whether this person was good for the children. I told Isabella that I appreciated her telling me directly and asked that she wait until the relationship was serious before involving Ava and Oliver. Isabella agreed and said she had learned from her mistakes about putting relationships before the kids' well-being. She said Tom knows about her situation and is supportive of her efforts to be a better mother. The kids met Tom 2 weeks ago and reported that he was nice and played games with them. Ava said he wasn't trying to be their dad, just mom's friend, which seemed to make her comfortable with the situation. My own life has settled into a good routine. I got promoted at work last month to a position that pays better and has even more flexible hours. The kids and I have developed our own traditions and activities that don't involve trying to accommodate Isabella's unpredictable schedule. We take weekend camping trips that Isabella never wanted to do because she didn't like sleeping outdoors. We have movie nights where we make homemade pizza and watch animated films. Ava has joined a soccer team and Oliver started taking swimming lessons at the community center. I've started dating someone myself, though I haven't introduced her to the children yet. Her name is Rachel and she's a teacher at Ava's school. We've been seeing each other for about 6 weeks and taking things slowly. She understands the complexities of my situation and isn't pushing for anything serious too quickly. The financial situation has stabilized as well. Without Isabella's expensive tastes and impulsive purchases, I'm actually saving money each month despite paying for everything myself. The house payment is manageable on my salary and the kids' needs are covered comfortably. Isabella has been paying her court-ordered child support consistently since she started her new job. The amount isn't large given her reduced income, but it helps with the children's expenses and shows that she's trying to meet her obligations. The most unexpected change has been in my relationship with Isabella's family. Her parents reached out to me last month to apologize for initially believing Isabella's version of events. They said they wanted to maintain a relationship with Ava and Oliver regardless of what happened between Isabella and me. I agreed to let them visit the kids occasionally and to include them in birthday parties and other special events. Ava and Oliver love their grandparents and I don't want my problems with Isabella to affect those relationships. Isabella's sister Lisa has become an ally in co-parenting situations. She often helps coordinate schedules when Isabella's work conflicts with her visitation time, and she's honest with me about any concerns she has about Isabella's choices or behavior. The most telling moment came last month when Ava asked if I was sad that I wasn't married to mom anymore. I told her that sometimes adults need to live separately to be happy and that both mom and dad were better parents now than they were when we were fighting all the time. Ava nodded and said she remembered when there was more yelling in the house and that she liked it better now. That conversation confirmed that the divorce was the right choice for everyone, including the children. Looking back on everything that happened, I think the most important lesson was learning to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. I knew for months that Isabella was being dishonest about various things, but I kept making excuses for her behavior instead of confronting the truth. The kids are thriving in our current situation. Ava is doing well in school and has made new friends through soccer. Oliver is more outgoing than he was before and seems less anxious about daily routines. They both seem to feel more secure knowing what to expect from day to day. I don't regret the years I spent with Isabella or the fact that we had children together. Ava and Oliver are the best part of my life and I'm grateful for them every day. But I'm also grateful that they won't grow up thinking that lying and deception are normal parts of marriage. The court case with Isabella's former employer was settled quietly. James paid back the money he owed and both he and Isabella signed agreements not to discuss the details publicly. James moved to another state and took a job with a different type of company entirely. Isabella and I now communicate mainly through a co-parenting app that keeps all our conversations documented. This has eliminated most of the drama and manipulation that used to characterize our interactions. We stick to logistics about the children and avoid personal topics. Last week, Isabella asked if I thought the kids would want to spend a week with her this summer at her new apartment. I told her that would depend on how they felt about it when the time came and whether she could handle having them for that long without other family support nearby. The conversation was civil and focused entirely on what would be best for Ava and Oliver. Neither of us mentioned our past relationship or tried to rehash old arguments. It felt like we had finally learned how to be divorced parents instead of bitter ex-spouses. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. The kids are healthy and happy, my career is progressing well, and I'm building a life that feels authentic and stable. Some days are still challenging, especially when unexpected issues come up with co-parenting, but overall things have improved dramatically. The hardest part now is dating as a single father and figuring out how to eventually blend families if that relationship becomes serious. But those are good problems to have compared to what I was dealing with a year ago. Ava and Oliver will always have some effects from their parents' divorce, but I think they'll also benefit from seeing that adults can handle difficult situations with honesty and dignity when they choose to do so.